to control the crickets from getting in the house. She would, like, the chickens were in the house yard. She's like, and then at night they'd have them in the coop. But yeah, she's like, no, I want.
Come on in.
Crickets.
Welcome. I think we've got a new handout for you if you didn't print them off already. But anybody need a pen? I see some clipboards out there, so this is excellent. Yeah, we got a couple more handouts here. Yeah, we got some newbies. Thank you. Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, this is a new one. I did post this on the Facebook group, so. Yeah. Two over there or just one?
One.
We'll just share one. Yeah. Thank you. Did you get one? Sure. Okay. Nope, nobody got any, right? Oh, you got one.
I got one.
Yeah, not nobody. Yeah. Did you get one of those? There you go. Excellent. Welcome back.
Yes.
It's good to see a few new faces in the crowd. That means that you watched the other one via Facebook, right? I hope. And if you didn't, I highly recommend going back and watching that. This one is actually being live streamed. I've actually been live streaming it for the last hour, saying please stand by for the live class. So what I'm going to do after the fact is I'm going to go and I'm going to trim it back to just include this and make sure that the sound quality is up to snuff and all that good stuff. But last week it recorded without a hitch. I didn't see any glitches, and so this one should be good to live stream. So there's probably a handful of people already joining us, but just we're going to keep doing this for the next 6 weeks. I really want you guys to be immune system warriors and wellness warriors within this. That's why if you watched the last one or you were here for the last one, we talked about that wellness warrior club that we're going to be starting at the end of this. Just keep a hold of those notes, and we're going to give you guys a discount just moving forward because you guys are the ones that are most committed to your health, and I understand that requires an investment. But let's get into this thing. This is why we're here, right? You guys don't want to hear what I talked about last week. So let's talk about what we talked about last week. Oh, I gotta get this. I quit watching myself and actually turn on the PowerPoint. There we go. There we are. Okay, so the introduction from last week. Let's start over here. So hopefully you guys over there have a good angle on this. But we talked about health is not the presence or absence of symptoms, right? Health is a state of 100% function. Most people don't start symptoms until they've lost at least 40% function. And so what they're calling right now is asymptomatic carriers are not healthy people. This was one of the big questions from last week when we were starting to get you guys excited about talking about viruses this week. Mm-hmm. The question was, what you're saying there can't be a healthy asymptomatic carrier. Why? And we're going to get into that a little bit today. But it really comes down to you can be asymptomatic 40% of the time and not be healthy.
Yes.
Because health is a state of 100% optimal function and healing. God designed us to be healthy. Remember, God designed us in the garden, without any interference to anything, in full community with Him. I would argue that none of us can possibly attain a full 100% function. But that's always the goal, right? Mm-hmm. Jesus came to be the example, yes, but not necessarily a realistic example because He was God and we are not. So our goal is still that, but just knowing that we're going to be struggling somewhere along this perspective by implementing these 5 essentials. The presence or absence of those essentials in our lives represents how well we're doing on that continuum. And you guys are going to know that better than I will. There's no test that adequately defines that well. Blood tests, just a snapshot of where you are in a moment. X-rays, just a snapshot of where you are in a moment. Even this digital nerve scan that we do back here, excellent snapshot of what you're doing in the moment from a nervous system perspective. And so implementing that is really what we're talking about. And so now you don't have to watch last week, right?
Now he tells me.
You're all caught up. Yeah, she came early to watch the show. So yeah, I had it running for the last hour. But what I want to jump into today, we talked a lot of philosophy last week, and we laid out some very practical examples. But where this really starts off with is even before the 1800s, really our healthcare system has been very closely aligned with mysticism for a really long time. The word pharmacology actually comes from the Latin term pharmakia, which is witchcraft. So it's like, okay, I don't think every pharmacist is a witch, but witch doctors, medicine men, it's all kind of been blended there. So out of this mystic cloud of like thinking that maybe I did something wrong and so the gods are smiting me with this thing comes this scientific revolution and awakening, starting to study things. This is where we start learning about genes and we start learning about genetic expression. And they discover these things called germs, and they don't know what they are, but they know that they're these bacteria, and they're starting to observe that they're showing up in places where sicknesses are. And so out of that comes this idea that a germ causes sickness. The germ theory, that when you get sick, it's because a germ is present. Jan, do you need a chair?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let's get you a chair.
I
Yeah.
have to sit right
Here,
up.
why don't you come right over here?
That's why we're all back.
Yeah. Like, you don't need to be standing the whole
Yeah,
time.
we
That's
can
all right.
back that.
Yeah.
We can use the.
No, she was there.
Yeah, whoever comes in next is front and center.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on the wobble ball, the hot seat, literally. So the theory behind the germ theory is that if a germ is present, you get sick. Now, that does not account for what things? The immune system, right? The health of the host, right? It says independent of anything else, when this germ shows up, you get sick. So, or sorry, jumping ahead of myself. So yeah, really at the same time this is going on, chiropractic springs up. And so Louis Pasteur, the father of the germ theory, the guy that gets credit for all this, he died right around the same time that chiropractic got started. This is D.D. Palmer. If you guys remember, he's the guy that adjusted the deaf janitor and he got his hearing back. And so he's like, okay, let's do 16 years of intensive research and figure out how adjusting the spine can help someone with their hearing problems, and discover all of a sudden, okay, no, it's not about hearing problems. It's about the function of the nervous system and making sure that that's not interfered with. And gradually over these last 100 or so years, 125 this year actually, discovering that no, the nervous system controls everything. That's the health and expression of life. Chiropractic is just a part of that that makes sure that this is healthy. So he asked this question right around the same time that medicine was adopting the germ theory as its modus operandi. I desired to know why one person was ailing and his associate, eating at the same table, working in the same shop, at the same bench, was not. Why? What difference was there in these two persons that caused one to have various diseases while his partner escaped? All right, good question, right? Yeah, it's a really good question, because if the germ theory is true, it has to be true 100% of the time. You know, it has to account for everything. So while we don't want to throw out germs completely, because right there is such a thing as a corona SARS-2 COVID virus, like that's a real thing that they've seen in a laboratory. Why is it that only, what's the percentage now? They change it all the time.
It keeps going down.
Yeah, the percentage of infection. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, the percentage of people that are actually getting infected, and then the percentage of people that actually get sick, and then the percentage of people that actually die. And we won't get a full handle on what that is, because this is a novel virus. Novel meaning new. We haven't seen this brand before, but we have seen a coronavirus.
Yes.
We've seen hundreds of coronaviruses. And that's why some people walked into this already immune, is because our bodies knew how to handle this already. So that's rabbit trail. Try not to do those rabbit trails today, but D.D. Palmer, he asked this question. And so out of that, this chiropractic philosophy arises. He established over 100 chiropractic schools across the country, 17 of which are alive today. And his son, B.J. Palmer, he said, if the germ theory of disease were correct, there'd be no one left to believe it. Right? Because if these germs are so deadly, like let's take Ebola, for instance, right? We're an international community. If we should all, like if it spreads the way they say it spread and it kills people the way it kills people, we should all be dead already.
Yes.
And nobody would be believing the germ theory, because the germ theory won, right? The germs won, they went out. And really, when you think about it from a microscopic level, you are at any given moment 10 times more bacteria than you are human, from a cellular perspective. From a virus perspective, let's go even a step smaller, because these are actually smaller particles. There's 100 times more viruses in and on and around us than there are human cells. And we're just discovering this, right? 5 years ago, we just discovered the microbiome and that it might actually have something good for us. And then just recently, we've started being like, oh, actually, these viruses might play a role too. So what what do we have here? So let's jump back over to the whiteboard here. Kind of have to understand what a virus is before you understand virology. So I've got an example on the slide here of a corona type virus under a microscope. I think that's more artistically rendered, but yeah, right? So essentially what that does, all those little crown points, those are receptors and proteins, and they interact with their environment all the time. And so when it finds a suitable attachment site on another cell, what that virus is essentially just a capsid and then either a DNA strand or an RNA strand. So basically just information on what should happen, right? It's basically like a library book inside of there. And so there's an argument, right, that viruses aren't even alive, that the term kill a virus is a misnomer completely, because it's not this living organism. It's just this cell membrane and then an instruction strand that's not actually telling this what to do, just it's there. So what happens is through this process, it lands on a cell. I won't call it a healthy cell. I'll just call it a cell. It lands on a cell and attaches, and it opens up and starts merging with your phospholipid bilayer, your cell membrane, because this is the same thing. It's a phospholipid bilayer or a single layer. And that starts to merge. And as that merges, now this liquid in here starts mixing with this liquid in here. And because of osmosis, right? What's in here and what's in here start mixing. And that eventually gets in here. Now down here, we also have DNA and RNA strands, most of which are actually going to be inside of your cell nucleus. And there's ribosomes and all these different components of the cell that when they encounter different pieces of DNA or proteins or lipids, they know exactly what to do with it. So they encounter this, and depending on what the instruction on that chain says, that ribosome will take it and will take it into the cell nucleus and actually snip out a part of the DNA to insert another part of DNA. And so then other RNA and cell parts come in and start reading that information and following the plans. So in a hypothetical setting, if this says to create the symptoms of coronavirus, as we've seen them reported on the news, then that eventually leads to the death of the host. If it's, let's say HIV, it leads to the death of the immune system and the death of the host. So very scary stuff.
Yeah.
If you just take it in its X plus Y equals Z. But we're missing what in that? The immune system, right? Because first off, the virus isn't in all of us at any given time. Any virus isn't in any of us, especially a novel virus. Novel virus means new, right? And so we're encountering these things all the time. So we have these different mechanisms. First off, everybody know what this is? Skin, right? So on your skin, the part that we see is not actually alive. First off, it's flaking off. If you see dust accumulating, like scary stuff up there, that's mostly dead skin cells. And there's a layer of that that's still attached out there. That's actually protective there. And that's not just skin cells. That's actually its own microbiome. There are good bacteria up there, mostly good bacteria that are on your arms and hands and face and lips. And that right there, if a virus attaches to that, there's nothing living inside of it to inject itself into. So even if it does perform its action, it just flakes off and floats away. That's not even a living part of your immune system. That's just like the castle wall, right? It's the armor, right? And not even great armor because we breathe, right? We drink, there's all this other stuff inside. So what happens if you breathe in a cell containing coronavirus? Well, pretty wet in there, right? Yeah, you've got saliva and then maybe a little bit of mucus, and then it hits up against, the mouth, the skin on the inside of your mouth, or along the esophagus, or even down into the lungs. Well, most of that also looks like that. Less dead cells on the outside, but it's still this multiple layers of squamous epithelial cells that really, they're getting less and less blood flow the more that it comes out, and they're going to wash out, and then you're going to cough it out anyways, right? Everybody coughs or sneezes or spits during the day, you know, or it gets flushed down into your digestive system. The stomach acid just burns it all up, and so there's no real risk there. So what happens though in the lungs, so this is in your lungs, you got these big sacs of air, and the sacs of air are really, when you get down to it, are really end up being tubules where blood runs through in this small space where oxygen in these little sacs called the alveoli can pass into the bloodstream directly. And this is actually where COVID does its work. Because, right, that's a single layer of cells that are separating that. You can see there's even a little gap in there. If this comes in and gets infected, now the blood flow can start transporting it everywhere. But again, what do we still have? We haven't even touched on your immune system. Your immune system, which actually lives in the blood. Your immune system, which knows what a coronavirus looks like, knows that a coronavirus is an invader, and knows exactly what to do to kill it, provided it has the right signals going through it. So that's just where this thing is living. There's so many more levels. I argued with myself all week, like, how deep do I get with this? So this is about as deep as we're going. I know I've said alveoli too much already. Yeah, I've said, yeah, squamous cell epithelial. Yeah, we're getting too great. So basically, your immune system, like, we're already this castle wall and sheet of armor to keep invaders from coming in. But then on top of it, you've got this immune system behind you that's backing you up, that's going in and fighting it off. It's like the archers and the knights on their horses running around and actually fighting off the bad guys, the bad things. So your immune system, though, needs to be in balance, right? Health as function also equals homeostasis. And homeostasis is a word I forget all the time, but it's a fancy way of saying it lives in balance. Eastern would say the yin and the yang, right? Yeah, you have to have a balance of high and low, just like your temperature. When you wake up in the morning, your temperature is a different set than when you go to bed at night. If you're working out, your temperature is higher than if you're just sitting on the couch watching TV, and that's good. If it didn't do that, that would be unhealthy. If you had 98.6 all the time, that could actually be a sign that you're not adapting well to your environment and that you're not healthy. Same thing with just about everything else. Blood pressure. Blood pressure should go up when you're moving, should come down when you're not. You know, what's another one? Yeah, respiration levels. Your pupils dilating in light versus dark. Like, if anything is stagnant, you're not fully living. You're not fully healthy. And so same is true with our immune system. You need your immune system to react in times of stress and strongly. But if it's reacting in times of peace strongly, now you've got an autoimmune condition. Or if it's an allergic reaction to something coming from the outside, that's more of an external threat. Or if it's suppressed, and so good ways to think about this from a nervous system perspective is the sympathetic response or the parasympathetic response. If it's sympathetic, it's the stress response. If it's parasympathetic, it's I don't have a thing in the world to worry about, right? When we've got all these other things. So internally, not eating right, not exercising, not getting your chiropractic adjustments, these are more the things that you're worried about if you're in too much of the parasympathetic state. If you're not doing those things and you're in the stress state, the sympathetic state, now it's type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, multiple sclerosis, lupus, inflammatory bowel disease. Those are the things that you get. When it's something coming in, it overreacts and creates hay fever. It creates eczema on the skin. It creates asthma in the lungs or sinusitis up there in the nostrils. When it's external and you're that parasympathetic rested, now those viruses, the bacteria, the fungi, and the parasites, those start to take root. And so you can almost tell where you're wired by what gets you. Are you high or are you low? We don't want to be high or low. We want to be high and low. appropriately.
Yeah.
We don't want to be one or the other. We want to be both, but we want to come back to the middle most of the time. So when I see that skin and I see a little pink and a little black, but mostly green, am I happy? Yeah, because you're coming up and you're coming down. Do I ever expect to see a perfect skin? No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, because we don't live in a perfect world. But we still have to work for that health and that health response. So where is most of this living? Your gut, right? 70% of your immune system is where the microbiome in the immune system is housed. Now, unfortunately, we eat like crap, don't we? Yeah, and so we create things like leaky gut. So leaky gut is basically a problem with the gap junction cells. So out here in your digestive system, in this tubing, right, you've got all these little things. You've got nutrients that need to get through, right, for you to build up your health. You've got pathogens that you don't want to get through. And then things like immune cells are out there. Things like, all sorts of different stuff. Let's not get too technical again. So when this is healthy, you've got these intestinal mucosal cells. So notice that they're not stacked on each other like skin cells would be, or like some of the esophagus would be. They're just a single layer running through there. There's a little bit of mucus out here to just keep that a little bit more protected, but you've just got this single layer, and then those nutrients can get recognized and passed through by just that intelligence that God put inside of that digestive system. But what happens is we compromise that gap junction, and whether that's through exposure to glyphosate, or you get too much gluten in your diet, or too much sugar in your diet, or big one for Americans, we take too many antibiotics and never replenish. Now these gap junctions start to fall apart. And now not only is nutrients getting through, but these pathogens are getting through. And on top of that, your immune system, it starts sending things out that were only designed to be in the bloodstream into the digestive space and start creating an immune reaction in the digestive space that now passes into your cardiovascular space, and you start to create an autoimmune condition. Not just a digestive problem, but full on your body and your immune system is attacking you, recognizing you as the invader. Yes, ma'am. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, the weed killer, and it's one of the most sprayed pesticides on our food in general. There's a lot of reports out there. If you just Google glyphosate foods, you can see which foods have the most. I was pretty put off when I saw that Cheerios was right at the top of that list. It's like, oh, heart healthy breakfast food, or heart healthy until it creates an autoimmune problem breakfast food.
Yeah, I have celiac, and if I eat too many Cheerios, I have the same symptoms as if I had.
Yeah, even though it's gluten-free, Cheerios are gluten-free, but because of the glyphosate on them, you can have a very, very strong autoimmune reaction if you have any sort of leaky gut.
Isn't glyphosate sprayed on some foods to make them ripen quicker too?
Yeah, so at least as of 5 years ago, they were spraying it on grains in general because it killed the grains and made them sprout, and then they could harvest faster. I've been told that that's now illegal. Hopefully, knock on wood, but I haven't seen any official reports on that. So what we've got with COVID, though, is not a disease of the virus killing people. It's a disease of you've got a comorbidity that makes you more susceptible, right? What are these top things? I actually looked this up, and this is as of April of this year. We already saw that the top comorbidities were going to be high blood pressure. There was going to be cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, coexisting infections, malignancy, and not even until we get down to less than 1% was it even going to be respiratory issues. You know, there was just a report that came out from the CDC, I want to say last month, that showed that 6% of people on their death certificate was COVID the only thing listed.
And even that, they're saying that there might be a genetic component.
Yeah, I mean, they don't understand everything yet. We're still learning about this, but what we know about viruses, we've known for a long time. And what God's known about viruses way supersedes anything that we understand about it. So we have to go back to his laws and principles of health and healing to really understand how to fight this off. And so the best way to fight COVID is not to mask up, is not to isolate, is not to stay as far away from others or bleach everything. It's to build a healthy immune system. Get yourself healthy. If I knew that I had cardiovascular disease, does it make more sense for me to take something that's lifestyle preventable and oftentimes lifestyle reversible and hide from everything that could possibly kill me, or to go help my body heal?
Part two.
Yeah, part two. Yeah, right. I'll take the second option, please. Yeah, so let's build a fearless immune system, and we do that through the 5 essentials. So this week I want to dive a little deeper into what that looks like, hopefully not going too long, because my wife has plans for us to go to an apple orchard later today. But yeah, that's why this is 6 weeks, right? Yeah. This week we're talking about viruses. Next week we're talking about cancer. The week after that, it's the advanced nutrition and advanced detox. The week after that, we're diving into fitness as it applies to immunity. So if you don't want to miss out, don't miss out, right? But we are switching to Mondays as of next week. So first off is core chiropractic, and that really has to do mostly with the nervous system, right? So really when you're talking about your immune system as military, right, which is great with a room of mostly women. But you guys understand, right? Yeah, if you have, and I'll refer to the man in the room, if you have a sniper, and all he's doing is looking through his scope, how well is he going to pick out which enemy needs to be killed fastest? Not very well. The enemy that he's shooting at, he can identify within this much space where he needs to hit it and do so. But you need a spotter.
Yeah.
You need a spotter. You need somebody that's got the wide binoculars and the big field of vision, and maybe, calling in from the satellite where everybody is, saying, this is what needs to be done. That's your nervous system. And the immune system is the sniper. It knows how to kill everything and knows how to kill it really well. If you've ever seen your immune system attack a cancer cell under a microscope, it's an incredible thing. It just eats that thing right up. But if it doesn't know it's there, and we've got some inflammation and we've got this immune response happening to something else because we're, again, eating too much sugar, not exercising enough, doing all these things that Americans love to do, especially in response to a pandemic. Now, something like cancer starts to grow and duplicate and replicate itself unbeknownst to those snipers that are out there picking off other things that maybe in the moment are a little bit more pressing, but long term is going to suck that life right out of you. And so that's what the nervous system is all about. It's identifying those things that need to be taken care of, and appropriately too. We don't want to send the cancer killer cells to the virus site of infection. We want to send the antiviral cells to that virus site and the cancer killing cells to the cancer site. And it's doing that all the time, provided that your nervous system is healthy. The central nervous system must recognize the invaders if we're going to fight this off appropriately. And so when you come to the chiropractor to get your adjustment, I say, after the adjustment, your power's on. Not because I'm turning on the light switch or the generator. The generator's already running. God breathed that into you at conception, right? Sperm and the egg come together and pow, duplicate and replicate itself 36 trillion times into this living, loving, thinking clay that's sitting here right now. Incredible, right?
Yes.
Think about it. I mean, just the miracle of life, like really miraculous, that out of two basically dead things, they're living cells that in and of themselves don't have any knowledge on how to grow or reproduce until you put them together, and then all of a sudden it just goes almost out of nothing. But what we do is we remove that interference. And how can that interference happen? Cell phones, sugar, toxins, glyphosate, car accidents, sitting too long in front of a computer, yelling at your kids all day. Not yelling at your kids all day and letting them drop stuff on each other and kill each other. It just goes. Life subluxates us. And so from that perspective, I will always get adjusted. And I hope you will too, because if we do not keep removing that interference constantly, it comes back. Some of you have been with me since I opened my office.
Yes.
And some of you wish you had been here to open the office with me so that we could have started a little bit sooner. But wherever we start, we just keep going because we keep having stresses in our lives. We keep having interference to that healing process, those laws and principles. And we need that nervous system to be functioning at 100% if we're going to stay 100% healthy. So that's the difference between structural care versus symptom care. There's a lot of chiropractors, and some of you have even gone to them, where they crack you when it hurts. And they'll continue cracking you until it stops hurting. And then they'll say, come back when it hurts. And remember, right? That's not a chiropractic model of health, because if all I do is get you here, I never got you healthy. Even if I get you to here, and it takes you years to get back to here, did I ever really get you healthy? And are you healthy even if I get you here? And then it starts going back, and we're not maintaining it. The maintenance of health is the key thing. And so that's the difference between symptom care and structure care. The structure equals your function. If you've got a perfect curve in your neck and you're straight up and down from the front, and you've got this nice curve in the low back, everything's firing at 100%, you're functioning at 100%. But if you lose that curve in the neck, there's tension on the spinal cord, pressure on the nerve roots, starts tearing at that, starts putting pressure on the disc in your low back. That's going to herniate, it's going to bulge, it's going to start interfering with the communication to all these organ cells and tissues out here. And eventually that malfunction, right, that spotting quality is going to decrease. And so then there's a little bit of plaquing coming up on the artery, or maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe it was an abnormal response. Maybe it was the anti-cancer response instead of the anti-plaquing of the arteries response. And then it starts to misfire and malfunction, and the heart starts misfiring a little bit in response to increasing the blood pressure. The blood pressure is a normal response, but it's responding to an abnormal process happening underneath. So you can live symptom-free without 100% function. And so that's where so many chiropractors even get this wrong. And so we need to make sure that that structure stays healthy. Nutrition. All right, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Anybody eat breakfast yet?
Yeah.
Good. I did. There we go. Catch up a little. Yeah. So this is where we really get it wrong, right? I mean, I'd say as far as Americans go, we get the nervous system drastically wrong. I mean, we talked about Zeke ad nauseum last week, and want to get me crying again, we can go there. But no, like as much as they checked his nervous system, they missed a huge chunk of his nervous system in this process. We treat the spinal cord as if it's just some appendage hanging off the back, like literally a tail almost. Like they completely ignored it in the whole health of his central nervous system. And if I hadn't been there, he wouldn't be here. Or if he was here, I'd be in a whole different world. Entirely different world. So I thank God that I went through the process I went through. I had all those breathing problems as a baby, and a chiropractor intervened in my life, because if that hadn't happened, if I had gotten off and not become a chiropractor, I don't even want to begin to start with where that is. But then from there, you just look at our nutrition, and we covered this a little bit last week, but just deeper, right? We get this so wrong. So wrong. We talked about, the food pyramid and how much grains we're being recommended to have. Now, if I was to point out a food that God designed that's so nutrient depleted that our body just treats it as sugar, which is a great source of fuel, what thing would you pick out? Yeah, grains, right? They're great. They taste awesome. You even get addicted to them because of how good they taste, right? I like bread. Anybody here not like bread? No, you learn to not like bread when it starts creating problems.
Exactly.
And it will, and we estimated last week that it's over 80% of the population has some problem with processing grains, partially because of the way that we produce it, and partially because of the way that since the time of Christ, that grains have changed and become more refined, less nutrient dense, and more basic, basically just a macro carbohydrate, and none of those micronutrients that actually sustain life. And so we've really robbed ourselves. And it really does start with sugar. I I pick on grains a lot, but you look, you guys are ahead of the curve. You've been doing this for a little while. I don't think any one of you, this is your first class. I hope not. Actually, is this your first class?
With you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, always good to have a
Be
newbie. But yeah, we have to start out with where most Americans start. And that's not even at the food pyramid. The food pyramid would be a huge step in the right direction for a lot of Americans. Never mind that, dairy is a huge problem for most of the world, and that grains are a huge problem for most of the world. Sugar is a problem for everyone. Our bodies can handle roughly 2 grams of sugar in an hour without creating an inflammatory response. 2 grams in an hour, and then we want to have a big old can of Coke with our lunch, right? Or not even with lunch, just by itself for lunch. Yeah, let's have that can of Coke for lunch.
With the
or
Snickers.
let's, instead of brewing our
Yes,
own
let's make it really
organic
good.
coffee and putting healthy fats in there and stirring up with a little stevia for taste, let's go to Starbucks and get one of those that has 46 grams of sugar, or I saw one last year that was like 96 grams of sugar in a single thing. It's like, okay, there is a problem. If we're going to address a problem, if we're going to legislate people being healthy, let's start with something that actively makes people sick.
Yes.
Instead of just a small portion of the population, let's start with something that affects everyone.
Yes.
Because when you get too much sugar and you create that inflammation, what disease doesn't it cause? Riddle me that.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Let's start. So where's the big source? So soda, obviously. If you're drinking sugared beverages, there's no fiber in there, right? It's just going straight into your bloodstream, essentially, at this point, because that's what sugar does. It just starts in your mouth. It starts absorbing right there. It doesn't even have to get to your stomach to absorb. There's only one other food that's like that. It's actually coconut oil. But it doesn't have the bad response like that. That's why people say start off your day with a tablespoon or a teaspoon of coconut oil. Yeah.
I keep it regular.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, a teaspoon or a tablespoon of coconut oil just to prime your digestive system to start burning fats. Start there, and then you want to look at some of the healthiest skinned populations on the planet. They're the populations that use coconut for everything, and you really can. You can use it as an antibiotic. Take it instead of Neosporin, put it on a wound, see how much faster that heals. Not because it's necessarily killing the virus or bacteria, which it does. It actually will if it's in a bad imbalance. There's some antimicrobial properties in there, but it also mimics the healthy fats in the skin and just accelerates the healing process because you're giving it the nutrients right there. And it's so good. It's so good for you. So we start there. We start with just the soda, the beverages. But then what else? What's the processed foods? Take a thing of, let's say just a jar of spaghetti sauce or barbecue sauce, ketchup, right? Mostly sugar or so much added sugar. Yeah, dressings, light, low-fat dressings, mostly sugar, right? Or worse, artificial sweeteners, right? You go on down this list. So basically what we need to do is eliminate inflammation with the good foods and eliminate inflammation by eliminating the bad foods. So those are some of the foods that have a lot of that junk in there. So 2 plans for you guys. The first is, you've got this thing conquered already. You're healthy. You're doing things the right way. And if you haven't read the Align Your Health book yet, start there because that's going to give you all the basics of this. It's going to give you all the details of that. The core plan is the foods God created in the way that he created them and said to consume them, right? We don't eat pork on the core plan, not because God didn't create it, but because God said not to eat it.
Amen.
And then we look at science and research, which isn't always perfect, is constantly keeping up with what God said. And it shows us that pork is the highest parasite per pound or per ounce of any of the meats that are out there, and is the highest acidity of any of the meats that are out there. Followed closely by conventionally raised meats in general, or processed meats. And so the core plan basically eliminates those things. And there's basically 4 points on the core and advanced plan that we just need to keep in mind that are going to differentiate it from the standard American diet. First is that when we're doing food the way that God designed it, we need to curb our carbs, right? If we're consuming 163 or 260 pounds of sugar every single year as Americans. Let's start by cutting that down to less than 2/3 pound a day. Let's start there. Maybe cut that down to less than a quarter cup a day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that'd be much better for just diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity, all these things that are hitting us. Start there. Curb our carbohydrates. Our carbohydrates should look like that, right? They should be coming in whole food form. Where we find carbohydrates naturally in a natural environment is in our fruits and vegetables that have the most nutrients, most micronutrients per capita or per ounce than any other food on the planet.
Mm.
But when you just extract the carbs because the carbs taste good, then you're robbing yourself of those nutrients. So get your carbs in that form. So curb your carbs is point number one. Number two, we need to fix our fats. So we've vilified fats in general, never mind that the most important system in the body is over 2/3 fat. We need fats, but then we've taken those fats that we do allow ourselves to have, tried to reduce the calories in them by refining and processing them. And now we're consuming canola and safflower and sunflower oils that are coming out of this whole extraction process that basically denatures the fat so that it's unrecognizable to our body. And so it creates an inflammation to try to just, number one, identify it, and then try to utilize it where it can. And ultimately, we're left with this big thing of inflammation. So what do those fats look like? They're whole natural fats. Sunflower seeds are not a bad source of fat until you pull that fat out of the seed, just because of the extraction process. Chia seeds are a great source of fat, but it's so hard to get the fat out of the seed that you don't even see it on the shelf. Walnuts and almonds and all these nuts are a great source of fat, but the extraction process is too much. What doesn't take a lot of extraction to get the fat out of there? Avocados, olives. Yeah, great sources of fats. You look at the best diet plans in the world, they're ones that have a lot of these, unrefined virgin, extra virgin fats added. Not a low-fat diet. It's a whole or natural fat diet, one that you're not relying on a decrease in calorie amount to get you your health results. And so fix the fats, number two. Number three, we need to perfect our proteins. I'm not here to tell you not to eat meats, because I couldn't do that. I'm sorry. I am glad that the flood happened, because after the flood, God said we could have food, we could have burger, like it's good, right? God said it, I'm all for it. But we weren't originally designed to eat those. And so they are just naturally a little bit more inflammatory. But we've started to identify the situation in which they're more healthy for you. And what we found is that when animals eat the diet that God intended for them to eat, then, and actually there's something to even the slaughter process. If you slaughter it the way that is kosher, there's less stress hormones in the animal as well. Then the animal becomes more easy to consume, and actually it's very, very rich in nutrients. Grass-fed beef is a superfood. It's anti-inflammatory. It contains a lot of those essential amino acids that you need. A vegetarian diet, you actually need to include seaweed in just to get enough vitamin B12 or supplement, either way. Some people do need to go vegetarian for a season, just because they've been on so many conventional meats for so long that the inflammation and the response, even just from an essential fatty acid perspective, it's about 17-1 in a corn-fed cow, where it's 2-1 or 4-1 in a grass-fed cow. And so we need to fix our fats, perfect our proteins, and then last is trash our toxins, right? We got to look and know what has the most pesticides and which food contains the most pesticides. Any guesses? What's that? Fruits. I mean, there are some fruits and vegetables and grains. It's actually meat. Not because they're sprayed with it, but because their food is sprayed with it. And then through a process of toxic bioaccumulation, it just sits in their fat cells. If it's a synthetic chemical, your body does not know how to handle it well. And so if it doesn't know how to handle it well, synthetic is not God-made. It's man manipulating things in a laboratory. It will just push it into a fat cell and say, we'll handle you later.
Yes.
And then we'll come back to you when we figure out a little bit more what's going on. Your body's constantly learning. That intelligence inside of us, it's not just a dead intelligence that was there at birth. It is constantly learning and adapting. And so it may one day learn how to deal with glyphosate. My kids may be better able to deal with glyphosate than I am. It doesn't seem to be proving itself out right now. Some things are just toxic no matter how you do it. Lead, pig, oof. You can get lead poisoning from your grandma having lead poisoning. Mercury, you can have mercury poisoning from your mom or dad having mercury poisoning or toxicity. It actually passes down through generations. So you want to talk about generational curses? How about drinking water from a bad source? Yeah, or injecting it into your bloodstream. So we got to look at those things. So those are the key points. So let me just say them again so you guys can make sure you have them. Curb your carbs, fix your fats, perfect your proteins, trash your toxins. On the core plan, I don't care about macros or calories at all. This is not a diet for losing weight. This is a diet for sustaining life. You may lose weight if you switch from the standard American diet to this. But if your goal is just to stay healthy, this won't change anything inside other than just making sure that you're giving yourself the right nutrients. And then just a rule of thumb in general, because right now we are more stressed, we are more depressed, we are more anxious than any other time I've been alive.
Yes. Amen.
And I blame it 100% on our response to COVID, the cultural response to COVID, and then my own personal adaptation to those stresses. We're seeing one of the biggest spikes in deaths by suicide that we've ever seen. So we need to give ourselves a lot of grace.
Yep. Amen.
We can't sacrifice our mental health for our physical health because it's all tied together, right?
Yep. Amen.
And so we follow the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, we eat 100% clean. We do our best. 20% of the time, I don't give a darn. Yeah. I don't give a darn. I keep a beer in my fridge for that 20%, right? Because we are designed to heal.
Yes.
God is perfect in this process. We are not. We need his grace in this process. We need to allow ourselves the wiggle room to slip up every now and then.
Amen.
And if we don't, we are going to be dealing with that mental stress all the time of trying to be perfect constantly. No one can sustain that. Willpower is a limited resource. The more you stress that, the more you strain that, the more you're going to fail. So plan out vacation meals. I don't like to call them cheat meals. Plan out vacation meals.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that as you implement more of those principles, those 4 key things, that even your vacation meals will get healthier. Yeah. I'm finding that my cheat pizza is still gluten-free and dairy-free and still tastes good.
Yeah.
But is it perfect on the carbohydrate versus fats and sugars? And that? No, it probably has some added sugars in there, and I just don't care. Yeah. But I care about how I feel afterward. If I'm going to take a vacation, I don't want to feel like crap either. So I just get better over time as my tastes adapt. When I first started this off, oh yeah, I was calling up Little Caesars and Papa John's and Pizza Hut and going out and getting like whatever I wanted, and I felt like crap afterwards. That's not what we want either. And you'll learn what your limits are in that. Some of you are probably even better than me because you've been doing some of this stuff longer than I have. I was a pizza delivery guy 15 years ago. Some of you have been practicing this longer than I have. And so your cheats or your vacation days probably feel even better than mine do because you don't even think about it anymore. It's like, I'm going to have a little of this and you just don't care. But at a certain point, it becomes, you have to rely on habits more so than discipline. When you create the habits, you don't have to have the discipline because the habits are disciplined for you. And so that's where I got really good at shopping in a grocery store. Is I habitually created this pattern of not buying bad foods. Yeah. And so then when I'm at home, I don't have to use that willpower to fight off not having those chocolate covered peanut butter M&Ms, right? Or if I do have those in the house, I have the dark chocolate, organic, sweetened with stevia version. Those are really good.
What are those?
Lily bars.
Oh yeah, I have 4 of them in my freezer right now. Yeah. It's really good. And they've got everything from caramel flavored to sea salt and almond. Yeah, I should probably sell for them because it's really good. Yeah, I'll be their rep. So what's the advanced plan for then? You guys tell me.
Fish.
Healing. That's right. That's right. Reducing inflammation, reducing sugars, overcoming chronic disease. And this is a lot more like what people would recognize as the ketogenic diet or the paleo diet, because it really is. It's a combination of the two. It's going back to creation and saying, okay, so what are we going to do macro-wise? And what that breaks down to here is we want about 60 to 70% of your calories coming from healthy fats. We want about 20 to 30% of your calories coming from pure proteins. And we want 5 to 10% of your of your calories coming from fiber-rich carbohydrates. Now you do the math in there and figure out how to get to 100%, because it's a range, right? Anybody ever do a perfect diet, perfect calorie count? You can. It's hard. It's stressful. You need like the scale and measure everything out and cut out the fat specifically and reinsert the fats. It's a very artificial process. Nobody wants to do it that way. But we can aim for this. And how you do that, it's very easy to get your fats there. You just keep coconut oil on you all the time. Take a tablespoon. It's so calorie rich as well as essential fatty acids rich that you're going to get to that really quickly. You'll turn yourself into a fat burner. You'll turn yourself into a ketone burner. And after about 90 days, you'll be able to burn all three types of macros really, really easily. That's the point of the keto diet, is do it for about 90 days and you become a equal burner of ketones, fat, and carbohydrates. No, that's a rough 90 days because everybody's different, right? And you also have to identify food sensitivities in this. So one of the things that I think should be added into our next nutrition book, because we do a new one every 10 years to keep up with what we're finding out and what we're learning, is sensitivities, food sensitivities and allergies. If we're talking about 80 or 90% of the population being sensitive to dairy and gluten, like maybe we should also talk about how to identify those things. And so just a quick test for any food that you think might be creating inflammation in your system, you will actually increase your pulse rate by about 5 beats a minute or more if you're eating that food or even just holding it in your mouth. So a quick test is get that carotid pulse, get a baseline, or your wrist one. Yeah, right. You got the smartwatch now. It keeps your pulse for you. Get it for a minute solid though. Like actually count it out. Know exactly what it was, not just your average over the last 24 hours. Get it right now for this last minute. What is that? Beats per minute. Okay, good. I got that. And then I would actually count it out with that food in your mouth after holding it in there for about 2 to 3 minutes. Or if you're just going to eat the whole thing consistently. But if you're trying to identify it, hold it in there and see if your pulse rate comes up. It's not 100% accurate, but in that moment, it's one of the best tools that you can have. And honestly, the blood tests are just, a snapshot of what's happening right now. You can get a false positive for an allergy or sensitivity if you've been eating a lot of that, or if you've been exposed to a lot of that, because your immune system will respond with that specific immunoglobulin that responds to that type of thing when you eat too many bananas. Yeah, if you eat bananas 3 meals a day, you're getting smoothies that are frozen banana all the time, you will develop a immunoglobulin response to banana. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're sensitive to bananas. It just means that on the blood test, it shows that it's above abnormal level or above that normal level, outside the normal level. And so we just need to keep that in mind when we're doing this. I was over at Hopworks yesterday doing a blast workout. It's really good. I actually really like it. But I was just sitting up front with the girls, and there had been another chiropractor that was in there, because chiropractors are, attracted to fit people in general. And she had set up a table with a scan, exactly the same one that I had, and they had all gotten scanned. And they're like, is this thing reliable? Like, what does it mean? And they essentially came down to the chiropractor didn't know what they were talking about. At all. Like the test wasn't wrong. They were actually doing the test right, but they had no idea how to explain the test or what the different readings were looking like. And so if you're going and getting tested for something, know that number one, it's just a snapshot. It doesn't mean anything. Like going to a gym and doing that test is probably one of the worst things you can do, right? I tell you guys not to warm up here before doing the test back there, because it disrupts the ability of that to go. So if you worked out within the last 3 hours, you will get a higher test score than if you did not. And so we try to control that as much as possible. If you're doing a thermography test, you standing in the sun with the sun beating down one side of your neck, it's going to heat up that side of your spine and it's going to read higher on that side. I actually did a screening one time that way as a student, where I was testing everybody that had been standing in a line with the sun beating on the right side and everybody's right side was super hot. And at first I was like, man, everybody's got right-sided problems. And it's like, no, everybody's got right-sided sunshine. But same thing is true here too. If we all eat bread and we eat bread 3 meals a day for 7 to 8 recommended servings a day, we're all going to develop some of these sensitivities that might actually not be sensitivities, but a response to increasing that glyphosate exposure and that autoimmune response there. Maybe we're not so bad with the bread and the grains, and we just need to clean up the source of it. And what's the number one ingredient in a sandwich? It's sugar. It's sugar because it's in your processed meat, it's in your processed cheese, it's in your, I'd say processed lettuce, but we are actually still using actual lettuce for that, but it's in the mayo and then it's in the bread. It's crazy. So that's your profile there. That's what you're looking at. Now, we also need oxygen in this process. I'd say the number one nutrient that your immune system needs is oxygen, and it's also not getting it. Right? Because we're one of two ways. We love to diet and not exercise, or we love to exercise and get care look about our diet. And so you do need a combination of both. And so I recommend 3 to 5 days a week of something that makes you sweat, something that gets your heart rate up. The most efficient way to do that is high intensity interval training, but even just the research on cardiovascular exercise, which is kind of low level, mid to low level, where it gets your heart rate up a little bit, and you may or may not sweat, depending on your toxicity exposures, can reduce your risk of illness by over 40%. Yeah, up and down your stairs. I mean, you can do this anyway. I mean, you guys have been to enough classes to see how this is done. I mean, even just stand here and punch the air for 20 seconds. And you're going to get your heart rate up enough to break a sweat if you do that consistently over time. And you don't need 90 minutes, an hour of working out in the gym to accomplish this. You just need to get it there for 12 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, that workout yesterday, Allison, we did it 12 minutes on the bike, and I was sweating after 3. It's great. Like, a heart rate's up. And the nice thing about doing it in the sauna is it does increase that blood flow just that much more, so that you're getting that oxygen in there more efficiently. So if you want to try out HotWorks, they are doing a free class. I'm not here to sell HotWorks at all, but anytime you want, you just pick up a card over there and call over, and they'll set up a time for you and walk you through what it looks like and try to sell you on being a paying customer. But yeah, it's fantastic over there.
What kind of exercise do they do?
Anything.
Oh.
Yeah, it's they've got free weights area that's not in the sauna, and then they've got bikes, they've got ellipticals, they've got Pilates, they've got bar, like ballet type bar, they've got bands for resistance training, and they've got yoga room as well. So I've tried the bike, I've tried the elliptical, I've done the yoga class, I've done the core class, and I've done the Pilates class so far. So far I like them all. I've had to keep a little stress off my thumb, but yeah, I'll go for more of it after we get in there. But yeah, I mean, I would sign up just for the time in the sauna, because that infrared heat is one of the best things that you can do to detox. It really gets in there, promotes detoxification and increased blood flow, which is very good. So you include exercise in that process, and now you're just more efficiently getting there. You don't have to sign up for a gym membership to get there, right? Right? You've all got the Max T3 program that you just plug into your computer and you can do, or the principles, right? 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, get your heart rate up as close to 100% as you can get it. Yeah, absolutely. And the next one. Oof. What do we want to do after we go to the gym? Wash everything off, right? Right. So what did I say is on your skin other than dead skin cells?
Bacteria.
A microbiome. You want to get a parasite infection on your skin, like ringworm or pinworm, real fast. Using an antibacterial soap after every single whatever. If you wash my hands like my mother-in-law does, which, I don't know how frequent you're supposed to wash your hands.
Yeah.
But if you use an antibacterial as much as she washes her hands, you're going to dry out your skin. You are going to disrupt that microbiome on your skin. You're going to make it more likely that now you're getting down to the healthy living skin cells that are in your epidermis. And now we're fighting with access to the blood system.
Yes.
You know, we're opening that up. And did any of you see my hands when I was washing them between every single patient? Oh, they were cracked. I had spots where I would have to stop and, you know, get some blood off. You think it's much more or less likely to get sick with that?
Winter is
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah, winter just dries everybody out.
Yeah.
What soap would you recommend? Because
So-
I teach high school and the kids have to wash all the time.
Yeah, they have to, right? It's the rules. And that's the problem is we're living in this world.
And that dries
Yeah.
out your hands.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, don't use a hand sanitizer at all, ever. There is no version of hand sanitizer that's actually good for your skin. And I never brought those in here. I just opened up both bathrooms and we washed our hands. After about a week, I was like, even the good stuff is still really hard on hands. So I moved to one with a moisturizer. And we use the Pure Haven soap. Jane Kuchta sells that. She's watching today. But there's lots of different options there, but you want one that's as natural as possible. That's just basically oils like a saponified coconut oil or olive oil or something along those lines. And then for scents and flavors, just essential oils.
I used to say, I still the doTERRA and
Yeah.
have a hand soap, foaming hand soap.
Yeah.
You have to do it like cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, for volume.
And Bronner's is too.
Yeah, Bronner's is hard on your
It's
skin.
strong.
It's strong. We were using, I think the first batch was what, Mrs. Meyer's that we used in here, and that was even hard on the skin. So yeah, you just have to spend a little more to get a soap that's actually good for you. But honestly, I think we wash too much.
Yes.
We wash too much. I mean, you look at healthiest population. You want to know what it is?
Mhm.
It's a 1950s or 1940s or 1930s farm kid.
Yes, there you go.
Working with the animals, didn't have any of the pesticides that they were worried about because they were just feeding them real foods. And I mean, they had that bacterial flora. Like my dad would talk about some of these kids. Granted, he was, you know, in high school in like the 1970s, but he wrestled them. And even though the city kids were strong and hitting the weights and doing all this stuff, they were more likely to get sick, and they weren't ever as strong physically as the kids that were working on the farm.
Yes.
Because that's real living. That's activating everything.
Fresh air.
Well, and I
And-
was actually thinking about that as far as the exercise goes.
Yeah.
Because when you are working out in the field, what do? You have to pull, you have to push
Yeah.
really, really, really hard. and then
Getting
go,
everything.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then really, really hard. Like that's the natural
Yeah.
hit. Like that's
Yeah.
what
You go
feel
hard for as hard as you
Yeah,
can to get
and
the
then
thing
you
done.
back off for a little bit, get a breather.
Go get a
and then
coffee
do it
break
again.
or yeah. No, that's the way that it's designed. And really the cultures in the world that are healthiest are not the ones that live in cities that have access to the gyms and even build it into their routines. It's the ones that have it as part of their natural process, you know? And we do that class about once a year, that healthy living class or healthy aging class. And we talk about what are the cultures doing that are living the longest. They don't hit the gym. They don't, go out of their way to exercise. They just exercise as a lifestyle because they're living on the side of a mountain and growing their own crops and raising their own animals. Antibacterial soaps is a part of that. They don't wash their hands after everything. They wash their hands before they eat because they've just been working with feces,
And even sometimes you can't do that.
Yeah, sometimes you just can't.
Sometimes you can't do
you just
that.
wrap up.
You just rinse it off
Yeah.
as best you can.
No, and even then, it's not always with soap.
No.
And I'm not saying not to use soap, not to be smart about this. Obviously, you want to get a good infection in your digestive system. Don't
Yes.
wipe or wipe and don't wash.
Yeah.
And then start eating, right? And that's going to create a really bad problem because of E. coli specifically. Is the E. coli creating the infection? I'd say it's you because you didn't wash your hands after doing the right thing. We know not to handle feces and food together. So that's the role of soap in this. We're doing too much washing, too much. And this really started probably with my parents' generation where they started sanitizing everything and antibiotic and antimicrobializing, but actually where are most of the antibiotics in the U.S. consumed?
A lot of them are meat.
Cattle. Cattle consume. I get my percentages mixed up all the time, but I think it's as high as 70% of the world's antibiotics are used in raising cattle. So it's just.
It helps them grow faster.
Yeah.
Ready for market quicker.
Yeah. So do look for the antibiotic free. Like organic cannot have antibiotics, but it's just such a mess. It's so industrialized. So what do you want to use for cleaners? Natural, whole stuff. If you're the best thing that you can use, cheapest wise, and what's that? Baking soda
Vinegar.
and vinegar.
Vinegar's
Absolutely.
the best.
And what we're using right now, just to keep ourselves compliant, we're using an EPA certified cleaner that is essentially vinegar and water that's run through an electrical current that starts to break it apart into chlorine. It's got some salt in there too, to break it apart into chlorine and oxygen. And so it gets those different components. It comes back together on our tables into same thing, but it's EPA certified that it quote unquote kills viruses. So there you go. But yeah, look at those things. It's one of our biggest toxic exposures. Obviously, we don't want the antibiotics, but then what does something like bleach or chlorine do to your nervous system or your immune system? Like, that was one of the things. Like, we didn't even have bleach in our house until COVID hit, and only because my mother-in-law brought it in. Because, right, she was responding the way that, really as rational individuals, we would to a threat like that. When people say this is killed by bleach, you kill it. But guess what? Bleach also kills. Everything. It kills everything.
Except for mold.
Except what?
Except for mold.
The mold. There you
It
go.
doesn't, which is hilarious because that's what everybody does.
Everybody uses it.
Like,
Yeah.
No, it
No.
doesn't work.
No, so you just want to avoid that stuff as much as possible. I know that some of us have to go into environments where it's just there, flying in an airplane, they're spraying everything between flights, and it's just so toxic. I had a couple friends go, and they were wearing booty shorts, and their legs just got all welted up afterwards because of the cleaner that they were exposed to. Churches now, like to even open up, if your church is open, to open up, they're spraying between services. You think they're spraying vinegar water on the seats? No, it's going to be very toxic stuff. One of my friends was like, I'm not scared to go back to church because of the virus. I'm scared because of the cleaners that they're using. Yeah. So it's just a lot of stuff.
Health club too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm okay using an alcohol wipe or whatever, but I'm not doing it because anything, it's not there. Stress also suppresses your immune system. And that's where I'm saying 80-20 rule with all this stuff. Give yourself some grace. Give others even more grace. Because remember, most people don't know this. Most people don't think this way. If we go out and we start telling them to take their mask off, right? I haven't told any single one of you to not wear a mask in here. Right? I haven't told any other patient. I'm not here to judge. I'll put up a reading about masks on the vibe plate so that you can learn for yourself and then go do your own research. But do your own research and do it at your own pace. No virus is going to kill you unless you are already dead. That's just the fact of the matter. If you're descending down this scale, your things can accelerate that, right? Don't get AIDS if you already have heart disease, right? Just not a good plan.
So the other 45%
Are lying.
either lying
Yeah.
or their stress is so high they don't
even
know.
And some people just are not self-aware
They don't
either.
have smartphones.
Like you think about probably the least healthy portion of our population is migrant workers in general. They are living with all this stuff. They're on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're just on let's survive.
Yeah.
They don't have a great self-awareness and realization of what it's like to live in fulfillment with their purpose and their plan and their calling. We're very blessed in that regard to be able to see where we're at on that scale. When Ezekiel stopped breathing, we went to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. Like, did it matter if there was sugar in my coffee? H to the no. It's coffee. It's keeping me awake. It's allowing me to do what I need to do. Was I getting adjusted that weekend? No, I wasn't getting adjusted that weekend. I called a couple of people. Sleep. I did actually sleep a little bit, but the sleep was so disrupted because my stress levels were so high. It was just because my body needed something to get me to the next level. And you guys can identify that in your daily lives. But the more you can identify that, the better, because it's that awareness that really allows us to take those action steps. Knowing that hey, actually, when I work out high intensity at Hotworks, I don't come out of there with a stress response like when I go for a run just in the cold, or even try to do that same workout here on the floor without that heat to come to support me in that environment. It makes a difference. Someone else may recognize that, no, that heat is very stressful to me because of previous experiences that I've had with heat. And so it's just a matter of being able to understand that and, you know, actualize that within yourself. So what are the key immune system nutrients? You guys name some of them.
Veggie.
Let's go micronutrients here.
Oh,
Yeah, micronutrients. Vitamin
C,
A, D, B, K. Yep. Just go down the list. A, B, C, D, E. Yep. Get the K. Jump to K. What are F and G? They just thought that K was the best letter to go to from there. Yeah. Healthy fats, right? Your essential or omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-9s, amino acids within there as well. Oh, you've got your micro nutrients, like your minerals, magnesium, selenium, phosphorus, even sodium is actually an essential micronutrient. Granted, we get it too much in this country. You know, potassium's another one that we need a lot of. So those are a lot of the key ones that we need in general. And so number one, I would say sunshine, right? And we're about to start getting a whole lot less of that according to what I'm seeing in the weather. Today is probably our last nice day for a while. But what does that mean that we need to do? Start to supplement that vitamin D. So we go from needing to supplement about 5,000 a day to about 10,000 a day, because we're relying on that 5,000 being able to get that from sunshine. If your skin's a darker color, darker tone, yeah, then you need a little bit more. If you don't tan as easily, then you need a little less. So that's where it's good to get the blood work done occasionally. Get that snapshot of where's it at. If it's coming out at 104, maybe you don't need 25,000 IUs anymore, and we need to back it down to 10,000 for a little bit. If it's coming in at 30, your doctor may say you're fine, but you're not at the protective levels that we see the immune system functioning at a high level with anymore. We're just preventing rickets. We're just preventing bone softening diseases, which at a point in time that was killing a ton of people. But that we're beyond that now. We're dying of cancer and we're dying of heart disease, both of which are protected by sufficient and adequate levels of vitamin D3. So get enough of that. If it does stay nice, if I'm wrong, because I'm not a weatherman, right? And apparently neither is ours. And it does stay nice. Get outside. Get 30 minutes. 30 minutes of full exposure will get you everything that you need for that day. You can build up a little bit too, because vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means that it absorbs best in the presence of fats. It also absorbs best when it has a microbiome to get into. There are specific probiotics that help with that absorption. We actually include the one in our vitamin D3 supplement that helps absorb the best, which is why people can be taking vitamin D3 for years and years, and then all of a sudden they get on ours and it's like, oh my goodness, I never felt this way. Oh yeah, probiotics, that plays a role too. I guess we could call that an essential micronutrient, even though we haven't identified yet which ones and how that works. But yeah, I would say people need to either be eating a probiotic-rich diet or supplementing with probiotics regularly. Vitamin C, right? So it's about to be citrus season, right? As it gets colder, we see oranges start coming out. Oranges are really good for you. Orange juice, on the other hand, still has vitamin C, but you're combating that with the natural sugars that are inside of it without the natural fibers that are in it. So orange is great. Orange juice, not so much. But yeah, even just supplementing with a low quality vitamin C can reduce the duration of some illnesses by as much as 17%. How much better if you have adequate levels of vitamin C to begin with? Yeah. And what do we see is the best combination of supplements that actively fights COVID? Quercetin, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc. Zinc is the one that specifically attacks the virus, or attacks any virus. It's very antiviral in how it works. And so that's another one that we need. So I think that's actually the next one, zinc. So where does it come from? Nuts and seeds, cocoa powder. Ooh, let's go have some chocolate.
Yes, amen.
I should have printed out a recipe for it.
Oh, I
Avocado,
Yeah.
Yes.
cocoa
that's so
powder,
good.
blend it up, put a little stevia in there to taste, a little sea salt to bring out the sweetness of the stevia. Now you've got chocolate pudding.
Wow.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And that's basically how I do it. I don't measure anything. So
Yeah,
I just blend it until it tastes good.
Okay.
But it's fantastic. You can do it with one avocado for yourself, and then you'll want to make another one for seconds. Or you can do it with like 6,
Or
and
friend.
no. It's chocolate. We don't plan on friends for chocolate. If you want to make it for your family, I'd say get like 6 Costco-sized avocados, put them in a blender with like 6 tablespoons of cocoa and probably six squirts of stevia if you're using liquid stevia, and then just a dash of sea salt until you bring out the flavor in it. You can add things like ginger or cinnamon just to increase the antioxidant profile or improve digestion in that process. But talk about a superfood pudding. Add some chia seeds or coconut oil in there if you want to improve even more the fat profile of that. It's great. And then herbs that people use for immune support: elderberries, echinacea. There's some other herbs in here too. Trying to remember all this stuff can be real short.
Careful about elderberry though, because eat enough raw elderberry, it's poisonous.
Yeah, you don't want to overdo it. Yeah, don't overdo it. You get enough sunshine, it's poisonous too, right?
Yeah, teas.
Yeah, teas and syrups and that type of thing is much better. But yeah, these things have been shown to reduce the longevity of illnesses by a lot. So if you take a little bit preventatively, get a tea that has some echinacea in it, or has that elderberry in there as well, that's just going to be so much better for you. But yeah, if you do find yourself starting to get symptomatic, start looking for holes. Don't just go and buy the Super C or whatever it is, assuming that you're deficient in vitamin C, right? Because increased amounts of vitamin C aren't necessarily going to do it, although there is some benefit to having hyper doses of vitamin C. But identify those weaknesses. If you know that you haven't been in the sun and you skipped your supplements this week because of budget or whatever, and all of a sudden you get sick, or let's just say you ran out, you start getting those symptoms. Start filling in those gaps. And that's what's going to shorten the duration. None of these things treat COVID. None of these things treat the flu. None of these things treat the cold. They help build your health because your body needs those things for health, right? And it's this spectrum. Where are we at in this spectrum? How are we doing with the 5 essentials that helps us get there so that this isn't doing this anymore? It's never allowed the access to that because our immune system and our nervous system are working together so good. Spot, snipe, spot, snipe, spot, snipe, spot, snipe. And they can never get in. That's what we want to do. That's how we want to build it. That's what we're talking about here, adding in those things. So I don't even carry this or this yet. This is how new this is. We designed this during COVID to help boost everything. So the immune support, it has that zinc in there, it has that elderberry, it has the echinacea, it's all in there now. And so you can just take that. I didn't put D3 in there because that's in your multi a little bit, and it's one of those ones that we take every day anyway. That's in the essentials packet. Vitamin C, again, that's a very diet-rich nutrient. We only support with that when we know that we're not getting enough vitamin C in there. It's one I've been giving you guys with the zinc. I've been using a different brand because we haven't had our own brand of zinc yet, but now we've just made it better, and we put it together with other micronutrients that help with the absorption now. So that's going to be a bundle that's available to you guys at a discount. As always, 15% off anytime you guys come to a class here. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, if you can show me that you've been here every week, you guys are all going to be part of my Wellness Warrior Club. And so we're going to make sure you guys get some special things out of that. So next week, cancer. I shouldn't say next week because it's not next Saturday. It's the Monday afterwards, Monday the 26th. Because why?
Football, go Big Red.
Go Big Red, right? Finally. We're going to be Monday night at 6:30 on the 26th. So be planning ahead. We will be talking about how all this stuff works in relation to cancer, how cancer works, how cancer can build up. I know we've all been affected by cancer either directly, personally, within our families or specific friends. I know I've lost friends, I've lost patients to cancer, so it's very near and dear to my heart. So if we go longer than an hour and 20 minutes, that's my fault, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you. Yeah.